Welcome to the NFLP final presentations. It has been a year of learning leadership styles, honing it, and working on these projects. And finally, we have come to the point where our fellows are presenting their final presentations. Gosh, it's been so wonderful to watch them start off on this process and go this far. We are definitely going to honor them next week at AMEC. So if you're going to go to Orlando, we'll definitely see you there, and we can't wait to show you our fellows and see how they have been so wonderful throughout this entire process. Our first group is with our strategy team. So let me just give you a background. The fellows, we selected 10 pre-meds, 10 medical students, and together they learned different leadership styles. They went through different webinars. They did think tank challenges. They came together and met virtually to get to know one another. And through our Slack channels, we got to know each individual's personality. Now today, we have different presentations from our national team and from our strategy team. Fellows selected whether or not they wanted to do a strategy team, which was looking at the strategic side of the SNMA. How can we make something better? How can we situate SNMA and make it strong for the next 5-10 years to come? Then we had on the flip side, fellows who did the national projects. These projects were programmatic initiatives based on the 14 different national committees that the SNMA has. So this is anywhere from the MAPs to academic affairs, to internal affairs, to alumni, to any other national committee that was willing to work with our fellows throughout the entire year. And this is the result of that. So with that, I will lead you to our first group. And our first group is a strategy team. So tonight we're going to be starting off with all of our strategy teams. Strategy teams were 3 teams, each with 3 fellows. And then we'll go into our national committee teams. And each of those national committee were just 1 fellow each. And so they'll be presenting on their own. Okay. And then in our audience today, we do have some members of the BOD. We have some SNMA family. We have some friends. We have some supporters. We have some consultants. And we have everybody who's helped us get this far. We could not have done this without the team of support to make this fellowship work. So with that, I'm going to bring in our first group and they can introduce themselves so we can start right on time. And here we go. I will introduce you with Aura and Ishmael.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Oriol Lakule, and I am one of the members of FLP Strategy Team 2, and I'm here with my co-fellow Ishmael. I'm going to let him introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ishmael, and it's great to be here with you.
Okay, so we are Strategy Team 2 on alternative value proposition. Like I said earlier, my name is Aura. As a brief introduction of ourselves, I am a third-year medical student at the Emory University School of Medicine. Keisha, who is also one of our co-fellows who couldn't be here today, is an incoming MS1 at Harvard, and Ishmael is an MS3 at the Borough College of Osteopathic Medicine. We also have on the screen Dr. Joyce Golson, who was a principal investigator, and Dr. Janice Johnson, who was our consultant for this year project. Our project statement, as given to us at the beginning of the fellowship, is our project's goal is to excellently position the SNMA to receive additional revenue streams that translate to increasing the value of a national SNMA membership. As we went through last year to this year, we really thought about what that statement meant and had a lot of brainstorming as to what we wanted to bring out of that project. And one main question really popped out to us, which is how do we best market SNMA to corporate sponsors? We really envisioned how SNMA could build this long-term sustainable financial relationships with both companies and corporations. That's the best way to have long-term relationships that transcend AMEC. As we discussed with different individuals and different stakeholders, we really narrowed down one main point of opportunity that we felt would be the best way to tackle this problem, which was to characterize SNMAs into our programmatic operations and outcome metrics. As we all know, SNMA does a lot of amazing work. We run a lot of amazing programs. We reach so many people and do so much great work, but there is no concrete way, there's no concrete record of how many people we reach, what are the successes of our program. And we really figured that to build this long-term financial relationships, we need to have a database. We need to have a data collection system that really highlights and lists out our programmatic successes. And by having this information, we can use it as a basis to establish more long-term relationships that transcends AMEC. I just spoke a little to the why of why SNMA needs to characterize its operations. About the how, throughout this year, we thought about how best to make our project statement or our project goals work. And we decided to connect with Qualtrics, which is a data collection company, as a way to document our successes all the way from the chapter level to the national level. So just as a brief overview, if you've never heard about Qualtrics before, it's similar to a survey on the front end, like say Google Docs or Microsoft Teams. But on the back end, it gives you data analysis that really helps collect data in a long-term fashion as what we are envisioning for SNMA. In order to do this, we connected with various SNMA committees and spoke to several stakeholders in SNMA to figure out how best can we roll out this data collection system in SNMA. As I said earlier, the main goal of our project, of what we really envision, is to find a way to collect data long-term, sustainably, and really build this as a system that will work for SNMA long-term. We also ran a Qualtrics demo in our FLP core as a way of showing an example of how we envision this data collection system working. I'm going to pass it on to Ishmael to talk a little about what we did this year.
Hey, Or, thanks for a great introduction. So the main reason why we chose Qualtrics as a company is because it's mainly user-friendly. It has automatic tracking for all the data that we need within SNMA, and it's also one of the best companies in the market. Next slide, please. So in terms of conducting a survey on Qualtrics, one thing I will say is from our demo, we found out that no matter what type of survey that SNMA needs or whatever type of information that SNMA needs to collect, Qualtrics is available to us. So here's an example of what it would look like on the front end for the survey conducting, who's actually answering a survey question. Next slide, please. On the back end is data analysis. If you take a look at this slide here, you see that we have, mean, standard deviation, variance, but not just analysis in terms of numerical analysis. We can also have qualitative analysis. So whenever we have survey questions where surveys have to type in text, we can take those survey words, place them in underneath certain categories based on like buzzwords that we're trying to actually find out within SNMA. Next slide, please. If you take a look at the left of this slide, you see that there's multiple ways in which you can distribute our surveys. And also on the right of the slide, you also notice that we can track the outcomes of our surveys or the responses to our surveys over long periods of time. Next slide, please. Now, when it comes to actually outputting the results of the surveys, we can export them as PDFs, PowerPoints, Google Docs, Excels. I think all this just leads to the efficiency of this platform. SNMA is a student-run organization, mainly led by med students and non-medical students, and we need efficiency. For us to really progress as an organization, we need systems in place that take short periods of time and give us great results in the back end. Next slide. So I think this is the most important question. How do we plan on funding our data collection system? Well, it's probably going to cost us about $10,000 to $25,000. Although expensive, we have thought of some ways in which we can fund it. So as of right now, we can potentially incorporate Qualtrics into grants that we are applying to. And also there's the Kaiser Fellowship Grant that we can allocate a portion of that grant to funding Qualtrics. So the Kaiser Fellow is sort of underneath the Community Service Committee. So this is a great system because now community service can actually have a way of tracking the events going on underneath that national committee. We know this will give us our returns. We need this type of system as a way to sort of transcend AMIC as the only funding coming into SNMA as an organization. Next slide, please. There are other alternatives on the market. However, the main reason why we chose Qualtrics is we wanted a platform that can grow with the vision of the organization. There are other platforms, but in terms of the thousands of members of SNMA, we wanted something that would work efficiently for all members of SNMA. Next slide, please. Now, looking into the future of this project, what we know we need are SNMA members that are interested in data analysis and survey writing. We would also like principal investigators and consultants who have a great knowledge of SNMA in terms of the historical aspect of SNMA. And we're also interested in working on the data collection within SNMA. We would also like anyone who's sort of interested in this project to reach out to us, and we would love to talk to you more about it. Next slide, please. So we've spoken about the strengths and some of the threats in terms of the cost of the project. We would say a weakness of this project is we don't really know exactly how much we would need to invest into this data collection system before we start getting returns within SNMA. However, we do know that if we are going to invest in this data, if we do invest in the data collection system, it would give us a way to create programs that we can market to organizations and build long-term financial relationships with said organizations. Next slide, please. We want to thank our principal investigator, Dr. Joyce Golson, our consultant, Dr. Janice Johnson, Dr. Priscilla Mpasi, SNMA leadership and stakeholders within SNMA. They made themselves available to us, and they really helped us in answering the tough questions when it came to this project. Next slide, please. You can reach us at this email. We're very responsive to our emails. We'd love to talk to you more about the project, and we look forward to your questions. Thanks for time.
Yeah, definitely. We'll also be representing at AMAC to answer any more questions in case anyone is interested in either being part of the subcommittee or just ask general questions. Thank you for listening, and also thank you, Ishmael.
We can't hear you, Hamara.
Yep, I was muted. That was wonderful, team. I'm so proud of what you were able to accomplish in that year. And I know that there was lots of comments that were coming in prior and people who are interested in this project. So please, 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 I urge you to create a sustainability plan so that this can be the basis of SNMA and so that we can utilize this platform to bring in more and enrich the SNMA. So kudos to you, your team. I know Kaisha is not here, but she will be there at SNMA, and I'm so proud of everything you guys were able to accomplish. So with that, if anybody from the audience has questions, they do have a team email address, and it's right there on the screen. So take a screenshot of that, write it down, and save it. They are pretty responsive, and we'll get back to you. They are really passionate about this project, so this is wonderful. Thank you. And we've had some good comments coming in. So we had some people clapping for you guys. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Ruth. Kim, she was saying thank you. Kaisha, she was there. Let's go, team 2. So let's do this. Thank you so much. And we'll bring up our next presentation. We also have another strategy team coming up. So this team, I will bring them up and thank you guys. And we'll talk to you guys. See you guys next week. Oh my gosh, in person. Thank you. Okay, so our next strategy team, we have Demetria, we have Phil, and we have Phelan. I will leave it to you guys, and I'll put your presentation up so you guys can do that in 1 second here.
Okay, everyone. So thank you all for joining us today. We are Strategy Team 1, and our presentation is on the membership portfolio. My name is Phil Broughton. I'm an incoming medical student.
Hello, my name is Demetria Walker, and I will be an applicant for this upcoming cycle.
Hi, everyone. My name is Fala Mahari, and I will also be an incoming student to medical school this summer. So we'll begin discussing the overview of our project. We're going to be reviewing the problem that we've been addressing over the past year. We'll go over the objectives of the project, an overview of each of the phases throughout the year, and we'll go into detail throughout that, and then at the end offer a special thanks to all our mentors who have helped us throughout the year. So essentially the problem that we were assigned to address throughout the year is to help pre-medical students in their gap years, whether that be post-bac students, graduate students, or even community college students who are no longer associated within the SNMA or within a MAPS chapter, and help them recreate that home, whether that be through creating a mentorship series or designing other interventions to help regain their interest within the SNMA. And so the objectives essentially were to provide mentorships for existing post-bac initiative members and ultimately improve the pipeline for MAPS. And so throughout the year, we've been increasing membership and participation within the SNMA by designing a mentorship series in participation with the National Postback Initiative that was started by Miracle Rogers. And through that, we've been able to gather interest and help recreate that home again within the SNMA.
All right, I'm just going to give a little bit of an overview of all of our phases. So during the first phase, we focused on establishing our project and we completed research. During phase 2, we solidified our project and we created schedules and milestones. During phase 3, we hosted our first Q&A session within the Postback Initiative series. During phase 4, we analyzed our team and project performance. And then during phase 5, we used the surveys that we took during phase 4 to implement some improvements throughout our project. All right, during phase 1, we interviewed Dr. Darko, Dr. Jones, Dr. Oliver, and Dr. Johnson. They are all leaders of successful pre-med programs to assist students getting into medical school, and their programs also successfully help post-bac students. And so during our interviews, we recorded them, we took notes, and we asked lots of questions, and we use this information to design our Q&A project going forward. During phase 2, we created our first flyer. We met many times with Miracle Rogers to help create our project schedules and milestones. We also assigned tasks going forward. In addition, during phase 2, we created Google surveys and we sent them out to different medical school SNMA chapters in order to recruit our medical student mentors. During phase 3, we hosted our first Q&A session and we met on the second Wednesday of the month along with the ongoing National Postbac Initiative series.
Thank you for that, Demetria. Moving on to phase 4. Phase 4 is what we call our feedback and project analysis phase. So with this phase, what we did was gather feedback, not just from the students that were involved, the post-bac students, but also the medical students that lended their time to us, because obviously we want their feedback too, because they would see things from a different point of view than the actual students that were seeking mentorship. So some of the feedback we got from the post-bac students, they suggested maybe the meeting taking another time on Wednesdays or Thursdays. And one thing that they really liked the idea of was a specific match with a medical student mentor beforehand. Some people just said thank you. Some people were saying they wanted specific topics discussed. And then looking at the medical student feedback, one of the big things they wanted was more time for the breakout rooms or just questions beforehand to help them kind of break the ice once we divvy everybody out into the individual breakout rooms. So phase 5 was our maintenance and improvements phase. This is where we looked at the project performance as a whole, looked at what we could have done better, but also what the project as a whole could have been done better. So we wanted to see, was the initial project goals met and was the initial problem solved? We also looked to see how we could implement those post meeting surveys to best serve the project as a whole. And the outcomes from that was we were able to use the input provided from the medical students and the post-bac students to make adjustments for future events. And we were able to analyze the goals that we saw from each meeting that we did meet, and we were able to meet them in future meetings. So with that being said, we'd like to give a special thanks to, of course, Miracle Rogers. She was a very instrumental consultant for us. We're also Dr. Darko, our PI, and Ruth St. Fort, who was also very instrumental in our project, getting everything situated. And then the interviews that we had with the leaders of each of those pre-medical organizations that we mentioned, Drs. Jones, Oliver, Johnson, and Darko, each one of them has great pre-med programs. So if there's any pre-meds logging, I highly suggest reaching out to them and seeing learn more about their programs, try to find something that could be a good fit for you. And then here's all of our contact information. Like I said, my name is Phil Broughton. We have all of our emails here, and we will now be happy to take any questions that you all may have.
So I have a question. What is your sustainability plan for this project, and how does it look like for the next year and perhaps even 2 to 3 years looking forward?
Well, I will be applying to be the Postback Initiative Program Coordinator for next year to continue on our project and continue our series. And also, I've also been meeting with Stacy to figure out some ideas for how we want to continue starting as early as May.
Oh, that's great. That's good to hear also. That's another aspect of the FLP leadership project is to develop future leaders for the SNMA. So this is actually a very nice surprise to hear. Yeah, thank you. And with that, can you guys go back to your emails are here so people can see. Yep, that sounds good. So people can see who to or where to contact you guys. I think this is a great project. What I've heard on my end is that people have been really happy with how this project has been going along and actually helping people now. So not only were you guys able to come up with this idea, but also connect with the right people and implement it all within this year. And that's just like amazing. So kudos to your team. I'm excited to see where you guys go for FLP and for SNMA in general. So definitely looking out for you guys. And we have some great comments for you guys as well. They said, amazing presentation. Always look forward to our Wednesday meeting. So this is great. So people are really loving what you guys were doing. And of course, Kim saying yay to your team and good job to Demetria and everybody out there. Okay, so let's go on to our next presentation. We're making really good time. So our next one is another strategy team made up of 3 people as well. We're going to have all 3 of them present today. And those people are Valencia. We also have China. We also have Deborah. Let me add her on. And your presentation. So let's get started.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Valencia Hines, and on behalf of the Strategy Team 3, we present to you our topic focused on organizational efficiency, where we'll be highlighting on our key deliverable, the Grant Acquisition Handbook. So before we move further into our presentation, we want to provide you with a brief overview of what we will be discussing. And so we'll introduce our entire team and support, followed by how we identify the problem and purpose. We'll also go in detail about our strategic deliverable, the feedback that we received thus far, and then concluding the presentation with our next steps for the near future. So here's our entire strategy team. So starting with Deborah, Sheena, and myself, which makes up the core strategy team itself. And then we also have Dr. Brittany Hazard-Bigby, who is our consultant. And last but not least, Dr. Judy April Aparachi-Marai, who is our principal investigator. So before we move further into actually identifying our problem, we first conducted our SWOT analysis, where we were able to identify the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats throughout the SNMA organization. And I want to take you over to our 2 sweet spots, and that's the weaknesses and opportunities. So we found out that having to sustain grants within SNMA is actually an area that we should improve on. And so we looked over to the opportunities and we were thinking, why don't we strengthen the grant acquisition by increasing more grants? That way we can boost sustainment of the grants within the organization overall. So having to combine these 2 aspects helps us to create a case for ourselves, where we're able to bring forth innovative solutions and change throughout the organization. So as a team, we want to make sure that our strategy problem that not only is actually beneficial for the leadership organization, but also or even in our personal lives, but also is actually effective and sustainable for all members for them to be able to adopt in whatever respective spaces or areas they're in. So the problem statement we came up with, we want to know how might we actually improve grant acquisition and collaboration at all 3 levels of SNMA, local, regional, and national. And to be able to answer this question, we believe having to provide a clear and concise grant acquisition handbook for the regional and national levels will actually strengthen grant sustainment within SNMA. So now I'll turn over the next few slides to Deborah, where she'll talk furthermore about our strategic approach and our deliverable.
Thank you, Valencia. So, like Valencia mentioned, we wanted to come up with a grant acquisition handbook to really strengthen the overall goal of our project, which was to provide opportunities for the regions and the local chapters to collaborate to identify and pursue grant opportunities. We know that there's a really big window of opportunity when local chapters come together within a region to do programming and look for funding sources. So we believe that the power in numbers would allow those local chapters to qualify for more grants. We also wanted to clarify some of the expectations and responsibilities that go into grant writing. We know that a lot of grants have specific requirements, but there are general overviews and requirements that might be applicable to all grant applications. So we wanted to provide some of those. We wanted to introduce some creativity for regional grant acquisition, as well as increase some of the national office support for this measure. So these are some of the things you'll see in our grant acquisition handbook, how to submit, what makes a successful grant application, so on and so forth. So in terms of our key stakeholders, we wanted to really target the regional and local SNMA chapters, as well as the national executive boards, as these were the peoples that we talked with during our investigation process. We also wanted to tap into the SNMA members because we realized that SNMA members themselves might have nonprofits that they're looking to strengthen, and applying for grants on their own is something that is feasible. So we wanted to provide this as a resource for every member of the SNMA to use in their own pursuits. So in terms of breaking down grant seeking, we identified some of the grants that have been identified and obtained by SNMA regions and chapters, listed that in our handbook. We used some online web tools to narrow down some resources that we could use to locate new grants, as well as specifically for the location and region people are in. We also wanted to make sure that the grants that we are applying to aligned with our organization's mission. As SNMA, we really pride ourselves on our mission, and we would hate for us to go and collaborate with another organization that directly contraindicates with what we stand for. And then we also wanted to talk about how do you organize and utilize those grant funds? How do you write summaries, budget reports, so that you can report back to the grant company about your progress and how you use those funds? So these are some of the things you'll see in the grant acquisition handbook. We have samples of cover letters, how to write an executive summary, as well as all these other things. And these are supposed to be usable friendly, so you can go in, fill some things out, change things, and really customize them to your needs. And we've also talked about how to organize grant funds, so how to do a fund utilization report, a budget report, program report, calculate your expenditures, et cetera. So all of these things will be very inclusive in making sure that your grant fund is appropriately documented for. And with that, I will transfer it over to my next team member, Sheena, to talk about our feedback and project analysis.
So based off of the information that Deborah shared of what our grant handbook has in it, we were able to take that information and email it to the stakeholders, as previously mentioned, as well as a short survey. So the survey, we were hoping to target the following goals. So after reading the handbook, were the stakeholders comfortable with applying for grants? Was the information sufficient enough for them to do the grant application, and did it also help increase their understanding of the grant acquisition process? So the survey questions were on a scale of 1, not at all, and 5 being more than enough. And so with that, we found that all our stakeholders found that we did meet the goal that we're wanting to achieve. So with this information, we will see that, next slide, please. We can obtain the goals that we wanted to achieve. And in addition to those 3 parts of our goals, we also left space for qualitative feedback. And notable feedback that can be mentioned include that from Dr. Spencer, which is a former SNMA president and a current board member, him noting what Deborah has mentioned, like the grant handbook being generalizable for SNMA members, and we're always finding ways to bring perks for SNMA members, and this is an additional perk that SNMA members can have. So if they do have those nonprofit organizations or acquiring or wanting to apply for grants personally, they can also use this as a resource to get that information that they're looking for. Also, Director Douglas from Region 7 mentioned that locating appropriate grant funding has been a little challenging in the past for her. So with this grant handbook, she can use that as a resource to apply for grants in the future. Next slide. So with that information, our next steps is one, first and foremost, continual development of this handbook. So to do that, we want to distribute this handbook on a grander scale to national, regional, and local chapters for their use, and continue to build our grant list. With that, we plan to have those things implemented by handing off our handbook to the national chairperson-elect, who has mentioned in her agenda that she has an interest for grants. And this grant handbook will be stored in a OneDrive link, so that way others who do have interest in it will have that access for not only now as a benefit, but for years to come. So next slide. And with that, we wrap up our presentation. And before we end, we just want to thank all these people who are on this list here who have helped us complete this project successfully. And at this time, we'll open up the floor for questions.
I will get the questions rolling. So my first question for you guys is, how, if I was a student who wants to help out the SNMA with this grant writing, and I come to this presentation seeing that there is this basically a formula of how SNMA can do it properly and be successful, how do you suggest I come out here and help out?
I would say get involved in like a committee. So we have the grant subcommittee, and they meet regularly to talk about things like this. You can work with your local leadership if you're involved in an SNMA or MAPS chapter, to work with your executive board there to see if this is something you can utilize. And if you have improvements, send those over to the national office so that they can be implemented into the handbook.
That's wonderful. Yep, that's true. And I'm glad that you guys answered that properly. There are people on this who are just giving you guys wonderful claps. We have Dr. Posse, who's helped our strategy team so much, definitely giving you guys claps out here. And then Kim, your strategy team leader. And then also, of course, there's Stacy over there. Just so wonderful for what you guys were able to accomplish this year. And I truly believe that this is going to be what sets SNMA going forward, especially the intersection between your project and the one where they were trying to figure out how to use Qualtrics to basically collect all this data to support projects like this, right? So that's always the end goal. How do we make SNMA stronger for the future? And this is essentially it. I know that when we started this thinking about what projects to do this year with the SPC, this was one of the top ones as well. Like, they were excited about seeing how can we actually leverage all the data that we have in the SNMA and actually get grant funding to potentially help students in other ways that they can't even think about what they might need help right now. So this is amazing, fantastic. And with that, let us go to our national projects. So thank you, strategy team. Thank you, ladies. And we'll be transitioning off to our next. We are keeping time, so I'm so excited about this. So let me take this out of the screen. Thank you, Deborah. And so our next person that is up and on ready is Anastasia, and she'll be giving her presentation. Hello, Anastasia. I'm working with the Community Service Committee. Take it away, girl.
Hi, hello everyone. My name is Anastasia Azor. So I'm actually the FLP Fellow for our Community Service Committee, and I've been working on our survey and data collection of events. So this past year, I've had the wonderful opportunity to work under the leadership of our two co-chairs, Kaya and Elizabeth, as well as our vice chair, Rania. Part of the mission of SNMA is to address the needs of our underserved communities. And this is something that we're able to achieve through the joint efforts of all of our chapters through our monthly initiatives, as well as our various enrichment programs. So this year, what we really wanted to do as a community service committee was to focus on trying to find ways to do data collection with these 4 goals in mind. We wanted to be able to find a way to assess the impact that our events are having on our communities, as well as further improve our events moving forward. And then we wanted to use the data that we're able to collect to be able to raise awareness so that we'd be able to write grants so that we can increase our funding moving forward. So in order to do this is something completely new to the Community Service Committee, we had to be able to do this in a 3-step process. So first, we went and did some background research. So during this phase, this pretty much consisted of us attending several meetings, such as meeting with the grants subcommittee, so that we'd be able to better understand what it takes to write a grant, as well as what information that we would need to collect. Then we had several meetings, both with the Diversity Research Committee, as well as the Pipeline Mentorship Institute Fellow, so that we'd be able to discuss a collaboration moving forward, and so that we could see on what other projects are currently working in the same manner. So in order to do this, we wanted to utilize the SNMA's chapter report forms. So these forms are actually the current primary method of SNMA to do our data collections. So what I did was I went and I did a mock survey just so I can see what type of questions and what information we'd be able to gather utilizing these forms. Next, we went to go and build the foundation. So after I analyzed the chapter report forms, I then went in and took the questions that are very specific to the community service events. And then I wanted to see what information and data we were able to collect utilizing those questions. And then after that, after I formulated those questions, we then met with the Diversity Research Committee as well as the Community Service Committee so that this went through an extensive review and revision process. And ultimately, we came up with 14 different research questions that we wanted to really utilize to focus our data collection efforts. Next, we went on to do our data collection. So during this process, we went and took the chapter report forms, which are downloaded directly onto SNMA's SharePoint Drive, and we extracted that and put it onto an Excel sheet. So in that way, we'd be able to better analyze the data from there. So what we were able to do from here was have some preliminary findings. So taking our community service events ranging from January to December 2021, we had a total of 643 submissions, both from our MAPS and our SNMA chapters. So we're able to see that primarily a lot of our events were actually solely funded using chapter funds. And then when it came to our pipeline programs, our target demographic was our Black elementary students ranging from the ages 6 to 12. And when it came to our health education and prevention protocols, our target demographic was our Black general public 18 and older. Like all projects, there did come their challenges. So initially, our greatest challenge was actually getting access to our chapter report forms. So currently, the forms are done through a third-party vendor, and it was a little difficult to get in contact with them so that we could get access. And then when we saw all of the submissions in the end, we started to realize there were a little bit of variation between some of our responses, which made it a little hard for us to specifically gather the information that we were looking for initially. And then ultimately, it was really hard to actually manually extract all of the information. So based on the current system that we have, we had to manually take each individual entry and export those each individually onto our Excel sheet. And that took an enormous amount of time. And I'd want to thank our Vice Chair, Rania, because she was really a big help for us to be able to extract all of that data and make sure that it was accurate. But of course, this project showed us so many great opportunities and strengths. So this is a great opportunity through data collection for us to increase our funding within the SNMA. As you might have heard from previous different projects, grants are a great utilization that we want to use moving forward. So if we're able to increase our funding, we'll be able to increase the reach of SNMA and our impact on our communities. Also, this really showed us the need for data collection because this is going to be what we're going to utilize moving forward to really improve SNMA. And this was also a great project to be able to collaborate with many different committees and different people so that we'd be able to work together to further the mission of SNMA. So our next steps going towards the future is that we wanted to do a system where we would create an additional survey solely for the purpose of data collection. So what we wanted to do is we did collaborate with many different teams, specifically Strategy Team 2. So through our collaboration, we were able to see that we want to think of a way to streamline better data collection efforts, such as utilizing a system that they were able to test for us. So we want to do that moving forward. And what I'm going to do is for our next steps is that I'm going to create additional survey questions utilizing the 14 that we originally used on this project so that we can move forward with a new survey solely working on gating collection for our community service events. And we just want to continue to find new ways to quantify the impacts that we're having. So ultimately with this project, there were so many lessons that I've learned, and I most importantly learned the art of following up. So since we worked with so many different people, it was really important to have timely and effective communication, so that way all of us would be able to have a great experience and be able to know that the work that was getting done correctly moving forward. Also, it really taught me how to be flexible on short notice, and especially to be accommodating to other people's schedule, because we really wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page at all times and we're able to continue moving forward. And ultimately, collaboration really was key here, because this project would not have happened if it wasn't for all the support and help that I was able to get along the way. So I want to end with this quote, that it's better to do great work together than good work alone. I want to thank you all for taking the time to listen to my presentation, and I'm open to answering any questions that you may have.
So you've got so many positive comments while you were talking, Anastasia. This level of detail is fire, and it's so necessary that this project that we have that for your project, and I'm excited for the rest of your presentation. And a really long one here. This project is definitely a game changer and allows us to reevaluate our perspective to our audience with this data. It allows us to use data for the grants. So one thing that I wanted to note that I thought was spectacular was your ability to connect with the strategy team number 2 on data acquisition, and understanding that was the key to really propelling projects forward. I think that was crucial to know that, and then being able to tap into that. So one thing, like you mentioned, was the ability to follow up and to collaborate. Like that's how we get things done, and exactly what your final quote was saying. So I'm glad you were able to figure that out throughout your process here, and I'm hoping that this project continues forward. It looks like you do have a sustainability plan,
Yes.
so I'm excited to see that. And I think that's it. Any last words for you, for our audience?
I just want to thank everyone for coming out and listening, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of the presentations going forward.
Yeah, definitely. You have more comments coming in. This is a crucial, great project. This is such a great project. The community definitely thanks you. So that is great. Thank you, Anastasia. This was wonderful, and I'm excited to see where this goes forward. So let's bring up our next speaker. This one is also from the national team, and it's going to be Tasha. And Tasha, let me bring you up. Hello. Welcome. And then here is your presentation. You are all ready.
Thank you. So as a National Future Leadership Project Fellow of Health Policy Legislative Affairs, I bring to you Lifting Every Voice in Medicine, Advocacy in Medicine. I thank you for joining us here today. So as we know, advocacy is changing what is into what should be. And in medicine, I'm sure we all are quite aware of systemic racism that's been embedded. And there's quite a push right now for health equity, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so this project was done in that light under the SNMA values to lift voices in medicine. As part of the SNMA mission, I just wanted to highlight that this project is, in essence, trying to bring out cultural competence, as well as increasing socially conscious physicians. And so in that light, this project was created as well. As a member of the HPLA, Health Policy Legislative Affairs Committee, there are several goals. Some of the goals are to spearhead SNMA advocacy efforts. That's something that we try to really do in HPLA, educating members more about health policy, about advocacy. We're seeking to improve SNMA's brand, the voice of the SNMA, and influencing healthcare, health education, medical education, and as well as trying to increase opportunities for medical students, local, regional, national levels, regarding writing policy statements, etc. And so this project is also to work on that. So lifting every voice in medicine, we are really just trying to educate, equip, and empower medical students, pre-medical students in this light. So what this program is, it's just bringing advocacy out of medical students and creating positions that will help to serve underserved populations and communities of color in the future. This series, I would hope that it would create a strong foundation and equip SNMA student members with the following skills. I would hope that it would seek to define and explain healthcare advocacy, explaining why and elaborating on why advocacy in medicine is necessary. We attempt to define and create roles and opportunities for pre-med students and medical students. We will do that by creating toolkits, workshops, etc. Also helping students to develop their policy statement skills even further by writing letters to the editor, op-eds, etc. And then later, in later stages, we would hope to facilitate a mentor-mentee relationship for students who are really focused on this area and hope to do this later in their career. I'm having difficulty with this slide. I'm having difficulty with this slide. Next slide, please. My slides are running. Not sure what to do here. Okay, my slides are kind of running. I'm not really sure what's going on here. So I will start with my. Okay, but we missed a whole bunch.
Yeah, it seems like this is all that
Okay.
uploaded.
Go
so
forward one, please. Thank you. No, one back one. All right, thank you so much. Apologies for the technical difficulties. So advocacy in medicine, what we did here, we created a seminar series and advocacy tips of the month. For the seminar series, we wanted to have a monthly speaker and do that by the SNMA Facebook with a moderator. We were able to do that for the month of February. And then we have advocacy tips, very much focusing what the speaker talked about. And then that would be what the student takeaways would be, like what that speaker hone in on. And then that's an element that or a gem that the students could hold on to for for building in this area. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we mapped out our schedule. As I said, for February, we did an introduction to advocacy. For March, I'm sure if you're anywhere near the medical field, you would know that that's Match Madness. So out of respect for those students, we did not host. And then this month we have AMEC. But for May, we have student advocacy coming on strong. And then you can see the rest of the schedule. This was kind of brought together by the HPLA committee, highlighting what elements that we thought as a committee would be strong to highlight in our first year. Next slide. So in any project, we know that communication is key. What we did for the advocacy in action, we had to do lots of calls, text, Slack communication to get the project off the ground. We did that by incorporating the FLP project, members from the HPLA, our medical education community. I had to reach out to several moderators, several speakers on LinkedIn. It's a very process heavy in networking, and then SNMA leaders as well. Next slide, thank you. Again, in the spirit of reaching out and communicating, I had to create template emails. This would be sent to possible speakers, letting them know that we are interested in their excellence in advocacy. So these emails have been sent out. Then we just communicate back with possible speakers. And then after we've confirmed dates with the speaker, we create a flyer. This is done by Canva, so you can kind of bring out the creative side of being a medical student as well. So it's not all like just communication. You do get to have a little fun. So a flyer will be created for each speaker and then sent out a few weeks before the date. And then in the light of professionalism and just gratitude, we also thought it is important to send out letters of thanks to the speakers for them, not only for their time and pouring into the future of medicine, but just an element of professionalism that we feel that is very important, and we wanted to embody the SNMA spirit in that. And then in any project as well, there's always some strengths that you have and some challenges to improve upon. So strengths, as I mentioned, creativity, not only just thinking of the format of the project, but also with the Canva, etc. So there are many opportunities with creativity, also what kind of questions that you want to ask the speaker, etc. There's lots of opportunity. There's lots of networking. You're communicating not only with your fellow students, you're communicating with students around the nation, and with our student advocacy series actually around the world. There's lots of delegation here. We are students, and so we have to really manage our time well. And so in this project, I had to reach out to other students who were quite helpful and let them know, hey, I need help on this. And so there's a lot of delegation of tasks. And then also in this, I was really, really able to learn the SNMA structure, because I had to stretch outside of the Future Leadership Project to have success in this program. I also had to work with medical education community, some SNMA leaders. I had to work with internal affairs, et cetera. And so doing that, I really learned about the SNMA structure. Challenges with the project, with communication, again, like there's lots of time involved in this, and everyone's not on the same schedule. And most of us are super, super busy. So just communicating and understanding pretty much like when is it appropriate to send follow-up emails, et cetera. And then making sure that I'm replying back in appropriate times as well. It's very important. Another challenge of the project is pretty much like keeping in mind the Black tax. We are reaching out to, for the most part, physicians of color, as well as medical students of color, addressing these issues. And as we know, there's literally 4 to 5% of physicians. And so reaching out when they quite often have other tasks. So that is a challenge here. And then just the time, as I mentioned, for scheduling, and then the lack of contact files. So to start a project like this, you really had to start from point blank. And so really trying to find out, okay, this is our topic of this month. We're going to do diabetes. Let's find someone who focuses on that. And so just the filings for that was a challenge. So what's next? For May and June, as I mentioned, we have student advocacy coming up. I've been able to connect with Laura Wooten at Georgetown and Joel Burvell at University of Washington. They are very excited to come speak with us. I'm also working with someone else in a different part of the world to highlight how effective student advocacy has been, and to encourage our SNMA members to really stay focused on it if it's something they've done. So really excited about that. Also, in the future, just keeping in mind that this is an ongoing project, and we just wanted to stay focused on advocacy, the education of advocacy, why it's important, why it's necessary, we'll do that, keep bringing in speakers so they can give gems to the future students. Allyship is very important. Dr. Michael Knights mentioned that we in advocacy, we can preach to the choir, but we need collaboration, effective collaboration. And so allyship is such. And then just in the future, I also would like to pass this project on to a future FLP fellow and hope that they can carry on their task. A big plan as well. We have, as I am also an AMSA member, and I've been working with the Education Advocacy Fellow at AMSA, hoping to do an AMSA SNMA collaboration for, because AMSA is really big on advocacy, and this is an advocacy in medicine project, and just hoping that they would bring the allyship. And so that is already in the works, and we're hoping to do a summer timeline for this event. And then lastly, just lessons learned. Communication is always key. And then using old project files can be helpful when starting projects. A quote that I'm inspired by: start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. I started here with HPLA, with SNMA, using the tools, effective advocacy that I learned from HPLA project, and doing what I can with the advocacy and medicine project. And so I hope that this would help encourage students in the future and really help us build effective advocacy and medicine within the SNMA. Thank you.
So you had a wonderful presentation and had people in the audience clapping for you, and also jiving with you on the importance of advocacy. So we have Rick here saying that advocacy is so important, not only to help those up and coming in medicine, but also to bring a spotlight to the issues that matter. Well done. And also we have a former FLP alum here, Melissa Hernandez, saying, I'm so proud of you, Tasha. We love seeing our firm alumni continue to manifest the SNMA mission statement. So woot woot for you right there. Okay, with that, we're going to go to our next national project. And this person that's up, thank you so much, Tasha. We enjoyed your presentation, and then we'll see you at AMEC. I'm super excited for that. Next, we have Chi, and she'll be giving her presentation. Thank you. And I will let you take it away.
Alrighty. Hi, everyone. My name is Chi Agua. I am a second-year medical student at Meharry Medical College, and I am here to present my NFLP leadership project, which is titled MAPS Postbaccalaureate Initiative. So the mission of Student National Medical Association, also known as SNMA, is that SNMA is committed to supporting current and future underrepresented minority medical students, addressing the needs of underserved communities, and increasing the number of clinically excellent, culturally competent, and socially conscious physicians. Now, SNMA has a few initiatives directed at reaching this mission, and the initiatives that I specifically worked with during this past year was the Minority Association of Pre-Medical Students, also known as MAPS, and within MAPS, the Postbaccalaureate Initiative, also known as MAPS PBI. And MAPS PBI was created to resemble chapter programming to better serve the non-traditional pre-medical students. So master's students, post-bac students, and career changer students who may not have access to traditional pre-medical programming because they are no longer affiliated with an undergraduate institution. So for my project description, as I mentioned earlier, the purpose of MAPS PBI is to ensure that the non-traditional pre-medical students are catered to through programming. And we ultimately hope to increase outreach to these students, and as well as to help these pre-medical students gain acceptance into medical school along their journey. So for program logistics, we had an ongoing virtual programming situation that simulated undergraduate MAPS chapter programming. And this was a year-long initiative, but we had bi-monthly webinars that catered to different topics for these students that attended our sessions. And we had a lot of different personnel come on our sessions to provide advice and some tips and tricks on what these pre-medical students should do on their journey to medicine. So we had pre-medical advisors, medical professionals, medical students come and provide information in the format of webinars, panels, and interactive sessions. So just to reiterate, because this is really important, the goals were to ultimately increase outreach to these students and to increase medical school acceptance for these students. And I'll talk about the pre and post-session surveys a little bit later, but we hope to gain information from these students as we have more years of post-bac initiative going on. So we're able to see if these students ended up matriculating into medical school and if they thought this programming was ultimately beneficial to them. So for the tasks that I specifically was in charge of during this year-long initiative, I helped with generating data on the success and outcomes of the initiative through pre, mid, and post-session surveys. I selected 1 month of programming to create and execute from start to finish. That was February. I'll talk about that a little bit later. I also helped with obtaining volunteers and speakers for monthly meetings for our post-baccalaureate initiative, and I assisted in any miscellaneous tasks that might have been deemed necessary by the pre-medical board member and the post-bac coordinator. I also helped with creating content for our flyers and for newsletters that talked a little bit about the information that we were providing during our sessions. So on this slide, I have my timeline of some of the items that I completed during this past year. This all started in August when I had an initial phone conversation with the pre-medical board member, Miracle. We started planning our post-baccalaureate initiative events in September, and our first introductory event was in October. We had a leadership check-in in November to kind of see how things were progressing. And in December, we were able to kind of take a step back and look at the data that we have collected from our participating students to see if we're meeting the needs that they highlighted initially. Also, I thought that this was important to add to my timeline. In January, we had a scheduled program for our students, but because our students are so close with us and close with the other students that attend our bi-monthly meetings, this just ended up being an organic conversation with MCAT advice, people talking about their journeys through pre-medical and medical school. So I thought that that speaks volumes to the comfortability and the success of our program thus far. So in February, I held my 2 events. The first was Overcoming Adversity, and this was held on February 2nd. And this was a webinar that provided interactive activities to help identify periods when participants had encountered adversity. We also discussed some ways to tackle adversity head on, and we had a panel discussion where we invited 2 medical students to talk a little bit about their experiences with overcoming adversity on their journey to medicine. So we had MS2 Krishna Madi and MS1 Odaro Adu join us for that webinar. On February 23rd, we had a personal statement workshop. And again, we had some interactive activities, but this was geared at helping participants brainstorm ideas for their personal statements, some tips and tricks on do's and don'ts of what to include and not to include in your personal statement and what encompasses a successful personal statement. We also had a guest speaker join us at the beginning of this workshop. This was Janine Wagu. She's an MS4 that recently just matched. So we were excited to have her. She shared some exciting news with us, and also she provided us with some information on what she included in her personal statement for residency, which kind of helped bring things full circle for our participants. So for this project, I thought that a lot of things were strengths. One of them being that I had some great support from the MAPS PBI committee and the NFLP leadership team. It was also really exciting to see the excitement of the participants that joined us each month. And that kind of kept us going throughout planning and creating these events for them because we knew that they were going to be happy and excited to attend when we put these events on. Also, the data that we collected from the pre and post-session surveys, that has helped us tremendously kind of look at the progress that we've made thus far and things that we need to change moving forward in the years to come for MAPS PBI. So this is some of the data that we were able to collect with our pre-session surveys. And as you can see, we catered to a variety of different students, including post-bac students, graduate students, and career changer students. A lot of our participants came in wanting to know how to succeed in the MCAT. They thought that was most challenging to them. Also how to tackle low GPAs and just really being able to get some information on how to improve their applications for medical school. We also had different types of sessions that we provided to these students. And as you can see, a lot of them were open to different sessions that we provided, whether it was webinars, panels, lectures, networking opportunities, and workshops as well. So with every project comes some challenges. For me, I thought that initially with the bi-monthly events, I thought it was a little bit overwhelming at first, especially since we were kind of jumping back into being in person with school. I had some scheduling conflicts with my school schedule and planning meetings with the MAPS Postback initiative, but that was able to get sorted out. So everything ended up working out. And also, since this was a new project, we had no framework to work with. But in a way, this was a strength as well, too, because we were able to kind of make this program our own and be able to cater to the students that came to our programming every month. In terms of sustainability plans, so we just concluded our last event for this year, and we have a calendar of all the events that we put on throughout this past year. So since we hope to cater to different group of students each year, we hope to be able to recycle the calendar of events that we've put on and kind of tweak events as we go and add new events that cater to the needs and wants of our students. We also were able to have a lot of partnerships and contacts that we worked with throughout this past year. So creating a list of all of these people will allow us to kind of use these contacts moving forward and to be able to add to that as years come. And also, as I mentioned earlier, analyzing these pre and post-session surveys have been tremendously helpful to us. So we hope to gather more information from our students and use this moving forward as well. So for lessons learned, one of the things is that communication is key. Communication is always key, and that was really helpful, especially because we were working with students from across the country. Also, to take each event one step at a time. So at first, it was a little bit overwhelming to have to look at all of the events that we were planning to put on for these students, but taking each event one step at a time was tremendously helpful to me. And also, mentorship is the best teacher. So I've learned this in my experience as a pre-medical and medical student with the great mentors that I've had along the way. And being able to pay this forward to the students that have been coming to our program has been a great experience. So thank you so much for listening to my presentation. Overall, it's been a pleasure to work with these students and to be able to help create programming that we hope to continue as the years progress. So thank you for the opportunity, and I welcome any questions at this time.
Great job, Chi. And the audience is saying it. So the pre-medical board member you've been working with is clapping for you. And also Stacy, that you work closely, said, I'm so proud of the work she has done. She has made instrumental contributions to the MAPS Postback initiative in order to support our career changers, postbacks, and non-traditional students. Thanks, Chi. And also a fellow saying, great job. You did a wonderful job. This is great. And I also want to highlight the fact that you're able to work with the strategy team to make this work. So you mentioned that as one of the things that you learned was communication and working in collaboration with others. And in order for this to be the success that it is, there was a lot of communication and collaboration. So great job on you. I know I asked the previous team that was working on this simultaneously with you, what is the sustainability plan? But I also want to know from your end, like, if it's a little bit different, or what do you hope for this project to do, and like what plan do you have moving forward to sustain this?
Yeah, so moving forward, we really hope to ultimately cater to the students that are coming to our events. And I mentioned the pre and post session surveys a million times, but I think that it's very important. So now that we've concluded with the events for this year, I hope to look at all of the information that we've gathered from our students and really see if we've hit on all of the things that they wanted to see from us. And then if we weren't able to do that, hopefully being able to create events that we can add to the next year of programming is something that I think we would be able to do. It may not be able to help the students that wanted to see that initially if they end up in medical school for this cycle, but ultimately we'll be able to help the students that come after them. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes, beautiful. Thank you so much. And we'll see you at AMAC next week. I cannot wait. For our next speaker, we have Benjamin, and he's going to be working on his International Affairs Committee project. So we will bring on Benjamin here. And let me bring up your presentation, and then we can get started. Okay, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Amar. Hey, everyone. My name is Benjamin Obona, and today I want to talk to you about my project, which was the development of a resource web page for international students. So a little bit of background information before I dive into the details of the project. Getting into medical school or getting into a residency program is tough. There are a lot of barriers, there are a lot of obstacles that you have to face in order to get into that coveted medical school or that coveted residency program. But that process is so much harder for international students. There are a lot more difficulties, a lot more barriers, obstacles that they have to face in order to get into the medical school that they want to get into or that residency program. So according to a few statistics, according to the AMC in 2021, only 1.4% of international students were accepted into medical school. And based on a national residency matching program, only 61.4% of IMGs match compared to 92.9% for US seniors. And one aspect that's been hindering these international students from getting into those medical schools or residency programs are the lack of resources available to them. The resources are extremely hard for them to find, so they don't have enough guidance in order to get into those particular places. So what I've been working on within the International Affairs Committee is to develop a comprehensive one-stop SNMA resource page that will deliver up-to-date information to international pre-medical, medical, and graduate medical students to help them along their journey in becoming physicians. So here are some of the objectives for my project. I had to first get an understanding of what the problem is. I kind of have an understanding, but I wanted to make sure that I fully understood the issues and the resources that they would like to see within SNMA. The second objective was once we sent out a survey to understand the needs and the resources, we wanted to analyze the results, analyze the responses so that we can have a better understanding of those resources and the needs. The third objective would be to, once we have that understanding, we want to do our due diligence by researching on those resources, find the resources that are valid that we can give out to these students. And then once we find those resources, we can create that web page that they can access whenever they want. Once the web page is created, the fourth objective is to market the web page, because it's one thing to have a web page, it's another thing to market it and let people know, let people be aware that the web page exists for them to use. And the last objective is to obtain feedback on the web page, because we want to make sure that the web page is addressing the needs for these students. And if it's not, we want to make sure we are making the right improvements. So here are some of the completed action items for this project. We created a form to understand the needs for these students. We analyzed the responses to see if there are some sort of general themes when it comes to the resources for international students. We found the relevant resources during our research, and we made sure that the resources are valid, they're credible we did a lot of research on that. And we also created resource summaries that would be uploaded on the web page for people to read, get an idea of what the resource has to offer. We created a web page with the website manager. We also created a group meet, because one of the things that students mentioned on our initial survey is that they would like to have some sort of forum to talk to other international students, bounce ideas, share ideas. So we created a group meet for pre-medical students and medical/medical graduate students to talk amongst each other. And right now, so a few of you guys listening to this presentation may be on that group meet right now. And the last thing was to create a form that we'll send out soon to get some feedback on the webpage we've developed. So here are a few images of the webpage. So in the top right, you can see a section where you could join the two group chats that we have to offer. We have on the top left, you can see the resources for international medical students and graduates. The bottom left, you can see the resources for pre-medical students. And in the bottom right, you can see a section where you can submit resources that you did not see on this webpage, but you feel would be beneficial to these students. And then here's some of the marketing. So we marketed on IG, Instagram, LinkedIn, and we also sent out emails to let people know that, hey guys, we have this webpage available for you to look at to gain more knowledge about the processes when it comes to applying for medical school or applying for that residency position. So here's some of the significance for this project, the sustainability. So we have, like I mentioned in the earlier slides, we have a section where you can submit resources that you feel would be beneficial and you didn't see on the web page. So our website or web page can be continuously updated, as well as there doesn't need to be a whole lot of oversight managing this web page. Easy access of resources. All the resources are under one web page. And last but not least, this is one of the projects that focuses directly on the needs of international students within SNMA. Some of the challenges, the novelty of the project. A project of this nature hasn't been done before, so we had to come up with original objectives in order to satisfy this project. We also had to find resources that are credible, and not only did we find those resources, but we also had to make sure we display those resources on the web page that doesn't overwhelm the students looking at it. And then last but not least, we had to work with a lot of different stakeholders on the marketing team, other committees within SNMA to make sure that this project was a success, which was a little bit difficult, but we managed to pull through. So what did I learn from this project? I learned that I don't need to hit a home run in order to impact students. Sometimes the simplest solutions can still have a profound effect. I didn't create resources out of thin air. What I did was I made those resources more accessible to international students within SNMA, which I personally think is an extremely impactful project. So here are some of the next steps. We want to partner up with this nonprofit organization called F1 Doctors. One of the things that a lot of students mention is that they would like to have someone mentor them, help guide them on the path on becoming a physician. So what F1 Doctors they do is they provide mentors who are once international students. So we're trying to see if we can figure out a way to strategically partner students at SNMA with the mentors at F1 Doctors. And the last but not least, we want to send out the survey that we created to get feedback on the webpage made. So that concludes my presentation. If you have any sort of questions, let me know. And a special thanks to the International Affairs Committee. They were amazing throughout this project. So thank you guys.
Great job, Benjamin. So I've been doing sowing seeds for about 2 years now. And one of the things that comes up a lot is how do we support the international medical students, either those going from in medical school, going into residency, or those prior to entering medical school and trying to enter medical school. So this resource, I cannot say enough how important it is and how helpful it is. And we have one of your teammates here, Tasha, who said, as an IMG student and a Think Tank 2 teammate, woo, I must say, Benjamin, you make us so proud. Fantastic work.
Thank you.
So this is great. And also we have down there, if you would like to contact Benjamin to know how you can get more involved in this, or even get access to the resources he has collated for you, definitely do so. Take that number down. And with that, let's go to our next national project so we can make some time. Thank you, Benjamin. We appreciate all the work you've done, and this is wonderful. Okay, so our next one is Chinelo, and she'll be talking on Academic Affairs Committee. So, hello, Chinelo, welcome.
Hey, everyone.
And let me put up your presentation, and you will be able to take it away.
All right, can everyone see my screen? Okay. All right, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on the call. My name is Chinelo Aguancha. I'm a second-year medical student at LMU DCOM, and I will be presenting my project on educating members. Okay, so I had the lovely privilege of working with the Academic Affairs Committee. The Academic Affairs Committee was established to develop and maintain SNMA resources designed to assist the general membership in their educational endeavors. In summary, the Academic Affairs Committee really puts the S in SNMA. So here's just a visualization of my project goals. The first was to update the academic resource database. Secondly, I was helping out with creating and hosting these virtual webinars. And we had a few academic resources that would be sent out via email. These were called the monthly Toolkit and Wish I Knew series. And finally, this year, we wanted to create a new subcommittee, the Academic Resource Subcommittee, just so that we had a few people in charge of all the different resources that would be available for the SNMA membership. So I worked alongside Ebony to make sure that got taken off the ground. Okay, so I just want to talk about some of the terminology that was just introduced. So for the monthly toolkit, this was going to be about 10 slides of condensed high-impact information to educate SNMA members on various academic and professional topics. This was going to be something that if you opened up your email and you were scrolling on your phone, hopefully you would just take out something here and there that you had not known previously. We created these monthly toolkits in Canva, and we wanted to send them out every month. One of the topics that we had created, for instance, was how to approach practice questions. So that just gives you a visualization of the purpose and idea behind the monthly toolkits. Another academic resource that we wanted to provide SNMA members was the Wish I Knew series. This was going to be where we had, for instance, second and first-year medical students maybe passing along information down to pre-medical students. One of the topics that we had brainstormed was how to spend your winter break as a first-year medical student. And finally, as I had explained before, the academic resource drive was available on Google Drive, and I was responsible for making sure that these opportunities were even still around, for updating the dates and the links to that. So in summary, my project was a ton of mini projects all put into one. It was great because it was a very collaborative process along the way. Again, this is everything that I had said in words. So in terms of completed action items, for the resource database, we had some issues getting access to that. We worked really hard to make sure that we had gained access to it. I had drafted a summer research opportunity webinar. I had also created a April 2022 monthly toolkit, and I had worked alongside Ebony to create objectives and guidelines for the committee. Okay. These are just some screenshots of the summer research webinar that I had created. So for the summer research webinar, from my own personal experience, I wanted to help educate first-year medical students of one, how to find summer research opportunities, two, how to apply to them, and furthermore, what to do when you actually get one, what to do when you have finished your summer research opportunity, how to make sure that those connections last. So based on my own experience, I wanted to do a 1 to 1.5 hour webinar where we could possibly have some panelists talk about their own personal experience. And I think this would have been a really, really good way to make sure first-year medical students who are SNMA members are set up to be great at their summer research projects. Moving on, here are some slides from my April 2022 monthly toolkit. I think it's very timely since this was in regards to how to prepare for a professional conference, and AMEC is right around the corner, so I think it was a great topic to create a Canva on. I really enjoyed working on this project because, one, I think it's very visually appealing. I created everything from scratch. I wanted to educate members first on how to prepare for going to a professional conference, maybe getting some business cards, how to prepare your mind space, and then also what to pack as well. So those were things that I had pulled from my closet, put on my floor, took a ton of pictures just to add that visual appeal. And finally, what to do when you're at the conference, and then when you leave the conference, how to make sure that you make the most out of all the information that you have taken out of it. Okay, in terms of project strengths, I think we had a great first meeting. We had very supportive team members. We established a group text right away. Everyone was open with feedback. I would do a monthly toolkit, someone else would do a monthly toolkit, and we would bounce ideas off one another of how to make our toolkits even better. There was a lot of creative freedom. It was great to be given these mini projects, and then I was given the opportunity to just create the topic and the visualization pieces for them. In terms of some of the project challenges faced, at times I was unsure of the type of relationship that was required between the National Committee and myself. So just in the future, it may be helpful to have one designated National Committee member be responsible for making sure that the FLP fellow has all of their goals met. And finally, for the second challenge experienced, we know that transitions can be really tricky can be really tricky in a very, very large organization. So unfortunately, some things just got lost along the way from last year in terms of access to the academic resource drive and some training videos for StreamYard that we were going to do our virtual webinars on. So what's next? I think everything that I had worked on is very doable by the next cohort. It requires very little training, and honestly, it's a great break from school because you get to have a lot of creative freedom, work with other people, and educate SNMA members at the end of the day. In terms of future plans, hopefully we can still launch the monthly toolkit, possibly put on the webinar, and my recommendation is maybe we just start a new academic resource drive. So in terms of lessons learned between working with the Academic Affairs Committee and the FLP webinars overall, I learned that during group meetings, it's really important to have some firmish deadlines when you leave the meetings and have some alternative plans as well. I think being open with any issues that arise is really important as early as possible so everyone can work towards those alternative plans. And it's great to work in a team, ask for feedback, and split up tasks. I think we did a phenomenal job at being honest with one another and splitting up our duties. So before I ask for questions and any comments and feedback, I just want to say a big thank you to everyone who's involved in NFLP. Everyone has been amazing, and I can see the hard work and dedication that people have put on behind the scenes. And I am grateful also for working with the Academic Affairs Committee as well. I feel like I learned a lot, and I grew a lot as a leader and as a student leader. So if there's any questions, comments, and feedback, thank you to everyone who has listened to my presentation.
Wonderful job, Chinelo. That was wonderful to hear. And just from a side note, it's wonderful to see how our FLP fellows have been working together continuously throughout the year. So the Academic Affairs, Akua, was also an FLP fellow last year. So seeing how this is continually moving the SMA forward is wonderful. So I do have a question for you. If I'm a student, which I am, and would love to access the materials that you have, how do I go about doing that? I know for sure I need to have an SNMA membership, but other than that, once I have it, once I have my golden ticket, how do I get to your resources?
You know what? Since your email is already in the database, thankfully, if you have been getting emails, for instance, the weekly newsletter, you should be able to get things like the monthly toolkit as well. And I believe if you go on the SNMA website and you can click on which committees that you're interested in, you can even get more information such as the Wish I Knew series. But that's a great question into how you can actually access this information.
Okay, so first of all, I don't have to do much work and just sign up, and then I can go onto the website and find it. Sounds great.
Yeah, very easy. We do all the work, and you'll get it eventually. Yeah.
Perfect. You also have really good shout outs. They say, love this initiative, Chinelo, and also another fellow, great job. And then, of course, Stacey, great job. I'm looking forward to reading the monthly toolkit and accessing other resources. I am too. So it's always a highlight of those emails. So thank you so much. Next up, we have another national project with Patrika Morgan, and she's going to be talking about the Diversity Research Committee. So let me bring you up. Hello, Patrika.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, definitely. It's all you.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today. My name is Patrika Morgan. My project was involved with me working with the Diversity Research Committee, and the title of my project is called Fortifying Our Network. The Student National Medical Association is committed to supporting current and future underrepresented minority medical students, underrepresented minority medical students, addressing the needs of underserved communities and increasing the number of clinically excellent, culturally competent, and socially conscious physicians. And so there are 14 committees that push this mission every day. And I was on the, again, diversity research community. And part of their mission is serves to research, research. Part of their mission is to produce surveys that for research assessment to further effort of the SNMA in addressing the need to support in addressing needs that are geared towards supporting pre-medical students, medical students, and future physicians. So my project, I was tasked to establish and to distribute a survey to address diversity demographics, student research experience, and research opportunities available to medical students through the SNMA's Diversity Research Committee. So this was so that we could possibly foster new relationships and strengthen existing relationships with the current diversity officers and increase engagement among current and prospective student members from the medical programs across the US. So some of the project goals that I had were to choose and establish a database on a platform of my choice. I gathered the information from all these diversity officers. I came up with all of the survey questions, and I distributed them, collected, and then analyzed the data. So I sent these out to all the medical programs and DO programs in the country, and I had a 12.9% response rate. And below is kind of like what the survey looked like. And some of the questions that I asked was, does your school have a dedicated DEI office and staff? I thought something like that was important because I realized while I was looking through some of the schools' websites that while there were some schools that had staff that in addition to their primary responsibilities, they would also be like on maybe like a committee or a team, while other schools had an actual office and dedicated staff to support their underrepresented students. And I thought that could be important for the prospective student and when assessing the kind of support system that they would have going on to, matriculating into medical school. Some of the other questions involved, like, would you be interested in receiving information regarding AMEC exhibitor fair options? Roughly what percentage of your students interested in publishing have accomplished this by graduation? Also, I asked questions that involved the nature of the research that students were performing. Bench work is always great. Molecular biology is awesome, chemistry and all of that. But what about the research that addressed the needs of underrepresented communities? And so that's also some of the questions we were asking in order to try and get medical students at these various programs interested in doing research that wasn't necessarily bench work and how the DRC could potentially support them. So some of the project strengths, the SMA is an established organization, and so it helps to push the validity of this project, increasing the chance of responders. It can be very difficult to send out a survey like this, being unknown, right? And some of the receivers of this may think like it's spam or what have you. Actually, one of the chairs of the DRC committee, they were asked about this survey and like, was it spam? But they ensured that it was valid, and so the SMA did play a big part in the response rate that I got. Then diversity demographics are definitely important for prospective medical students, as I kind of said before. You kind of want to, like when picking your school, you want to make sure that you're able to do the kind of research that you would like to do, and also know that you have a supportive staff waiting for you and supporting you throughout that journey. The DRC chairs, Jamal and Antonio, made themselves available to me while I was putting together these survey questions. And, initially I came up with a long list of questions, and then, they were helpful in cutting it down to size and kind of pinpointing some of the questions we wanted to ask based on the information we were trying to pull from that. and I was able to stick to my SMART goals. So some of the project challenges were that it was a new project. I didn't know where to start really, but I think more with just talking to the committee chairs on what the goal of the project was. Eventually, I was able to come up with, how I wanted to organize all of this information and how I was going to distribute that and to whom I was going to distribute to. And whom I was going to distribute it to. FLP meetings often conflicted with the DRC meetings, unfortunately. I really wanted to go to more of those meetings so I could, engage with more of the board. But as I said, I was able to meet with Jamal and Antonio outside of those meetings, and they really dedicated like their free time to me. So that was really helpful in the end. And some of these below are some of the medical schools that responded to the survey. And then at the top is basically information about some of the DRC programs, resources that we offer to medical students that are trying to engage in research. And this was just me asking them how many of you are interested or do have medical students that would be interested in something like this. And those were the percentages. So basically we can take the respondents and basically what they were interested from what I asked, and in the future try and send out more resources to those DEI officers, and so that they can disseminate that to their students, and that we can get more engagement and more students taking advantage of what the DRC has to offer. Some of the lessons I learned was sticking to the timeline is imperative. This was a large data set. It was definitely important to organize it, and communication, as I said, like we had to communicate not through the typical meeting, but utilizing their own free time. So coordinating those, phone calls and meetings was all through communication and being adaptable with the different schedules. And so that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for coming. And yeah.
Thank you, Patrika. That was wonderful. I want to put up a comment that Dr. Posse said while you were speaking. And it says, Patrika, the fact that you emailed every school is a project in itself. And I have to say, I second this. This is very difficult to do. And the fact that you mentioned that the anecdote of this survey coming back to the DRC community and saying, is this for real, is, I think, indicative of how important this is, right? Because people want this, and we've seen that from past in the history. And then you actually taking the initiative to work on it is huge. And emailing schools, another bonus on top of that. So great for that. A question for you is, how do you see this data set being used in the future? And also, how do you see this data set being maintained? I mean, I think the beauty of data is that it gives us information, but the downside of data is that it has to be constantly maintained and updated. So how do you see that moving forward?
Thank you for your question. I think that this can be directly used from the DRC committee, like the new DRC incoming members, especially when they're trying to reach out to schools that maybe benefit from knowing that we have these research grants or these programs. Of course, you have to be a member to access that, and so some students may not even be aware of our org yet or be members of our org yet, but because they see that the resources that we have available, they now become members and are able to use these resources, and now we have new connections at this school. And I think that the DRC committee going forward can use this to just make more connections, I think.
Perfect. That sounds good. Thank you so much. And with that, I'll let you hop off so we can do our next presentation. And then we have, next up is Fio, and she will be doing her project with the MAPS committee. So Fio, let me add you to the screen. And here is your presentation. So go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Oh, yeah, I think you can. Okay. Awesome. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Faya Oyalola, and I am the current NFLP fellow working with the MAPS committee on the Maps for All project. The Maps for All project is focused on increasing MAPS chapter involvement across HBCU institutions. Before I really go into the project, I added this slide to just really emphasize that the Maps for All project initiative is really aimed at the supporting future underrepresented minority students aspect of the SNMA mission. This slide just serves to provide some background information on where exactly the Maps for All project stemmed from. And so the SNMA offers various pipeline programs, with the Pipeline Mentoring Institute serving as the umbrella for the other initiatives. As you can see, the Minority Association for Pre-Medical Students, also known as MAPS, is what the Maps for All project is centered around. So MAPS is designed to increase the number of minority students matriculating into medical school, and it consists of the undergrad and post-baccalaureate students of the SNMA, whom are also considered the SNMA National Associate members. MAPS is represented on the BOD by the National Pre-Medical Board member, and listed here are just some of the many benefits that MAPS has to offer, including conferences, leadership opportunities, and medical school webinars, and also test prep help. The next few slides will briefly just cover the initial project goals for the Maps for All project. And the initial project goals are as follows: to develop official, updated, and accessible database/contact list for all MAPS chapters, and also to work in collaboration with the PMBM, National MAPS Vice Chair, MAPS Mentorship, and headquarters to establish this database by identifying all active and inactive chapters. And these are just some pictures to show the completed action items of the initial project goals. And so in the process of compiling the information from these responses, I was told that the information being requested was also being collected and housed by headquarters in the chapter update forms. And so the trajectory of my project changed, and I will now be discussing the modified project goals. So these are the modified project goals, and they are as followed. It is aimed at increasing the number of SNMA MAPS chapters at HBCUs and identifying the HBCUs with and without a MAPS chapter that are interested in becoming officially chartered MAPS chapters in the near future, and also to create a database collection of these schools. Also, to identify HBCU institutions that have any other organizations that are similar to or related to the MAPS chapters that we have, that we could also possibly charter as well, and to reach out to the HBCUs without a MAPS chapter to see if they've identified any students interested in starting a MAPS chapter at their school. So this is just a continuation of the modified goals, and it is to plan SNMA/MAPS informational sessions for the HBCUs by working in collaboration with the PMBM and MAPS Vice Chair, and ultimately to aid in facilitating connections between MAPS and SNMA sponsor chapters. The next few slides will focus on the completed action items for the modified goals. And so here's just a timeline covering the main events of the project. In the months of October and November, I was still working on the previous project goals, and so I'm briefly just gonna glide over those. And so in December of 2021, I was introduced to this new project goal by the MAPS Vice Chair, and I began identifying the HBCUs with and without a MAPS chapter, and also created the email template to send out to these schools.
In January, I reached out to the MAPS membership and MAPS mentorship coordinators for collaboration, and we had our first meeting this month and began to compile our HBCU contact list. In February of 2022, we finalized this list and had a few more Zoom sessions discussing the email template to be sent out to the schools, and we began contacting the first batch of HBCUs. In March, we contacted the other HBCUs and also sent follow-up emails. However, there were no responses to the emails nor the informational session inquiry link that we added to the emails. So we decided to pivot and plan for the transition of the MAPS for All Phase 3. And so this is just a picture of some of the completed action items. These are images of the HBCUs by region and state. And this image over here to the left is the informational session inquiry link that was attached to the emails that was sent out to the HBCUs. And to the right are just some more of the Excel logistics. And this slide just shows a screen grab of what the emails that were sent out to the schools looked like. And this one over here was sent to Morehouse. And this is just an image of a flyer that can be utilized for the Phase 2 of the MAPS for All project when reaching back out to the schools. Regarding the project strengths, I received amazing support and assistance from the PMBM, MAPS Vice Chair, MAPS Mentorship, and Membership Coordinators. This new project initiative is still targeted at establishing and facilitating connections with MAPS and SNMA chapters via networking, and the new initiative really aims at serving and supporting underrepresented minorities, as stated in the SNMA mission, however, with a focus on HBCUs. For the project challenges, it wasn't made clear that the information being requested for the MAPS database was already being kept on file by headquarters in the chapter update forms, and also having to restart a new project initiative. However, I was still really passionate about this project initiative, being that I attended an HBCU myself. Another project challenge was communication. And also in terms of reaching out to the schools, there was a strict and hard February 1st deadline to submit the chapter charter application forms, which prevented the schools from being chartered this year. So for a sustainability plan, I believe that the MAPS for All project can be taken in so many different directions. I believe that there can be a Phase 3 and beyond. And so I think this can be continued next year. Also working on getting the listed chapters chartered in the upcoming year, because that wasn't able to get accomplished this year. And also getting interested HBCUs established with a regional director, MAP liaisons, PMRs for their region. And again, just the longevity of the MAPS for All project. The lessons learned during this time was that being flexible and open to change makes the process so much easier to handle and maneuver, and also reaching out for help to collaborate on a project only brings more people together with more great ideas and efforts. Thank you. Any questions?
Great job, Bio. This was wonderful. I think being able to communicate with a particular group of schools, the HBCUs, and bringing more of them into our SNMA chapter and our SNMA family is very important. So a question for you, and well, maybe more so like a comment. I think it's very difficult to pivot in the middle of a project, extremely difficult. And you did so 2 times. I think that resilience is what we try to also build within the FLP, right? Because whenever you're working in a project or a team, it will not always be smooth sailing. And the person who reaches the end line is the one who's flexible enough to pivot and to still maintain clarity and go forward. So I commend you. That was difficult at the last moment. So Thank you so much. And I know that you talked about your sustainability plan. That's always my number one question, because that's one thing that gets lost from year to year. So I'm glad to hear that. And I'm glad that you had passion for it, especially being from the HBCU. So continue that passion. I hope to see you continue FLP, being FLP leadership and helping them the next generation of FLP come through. So thank you so much, Bio. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Amara.
Yeah. So our next presentation will be from another National Committee person, and this will be with Niat, and she's going to be doing with the Diversity Research Committee. So I'll bring you up here, Niat. Welcome, and here are your slides, and you can take it away.
All right, thank you, Amara. Hey everyone, so my name is Niat, and I am one of the FLP fellows working with the Diversity Research Committee on a research project to investigate the various obstacles and opportunities available to those who are underrepresented future physicians. So a little bit about the purpose of my project. So it's the project is essentially to look at the various obstacles and opportunities, or challenges and opportunities available to those who are going to be future physicians, so pre-medical and medical students. And it's important to investigate, like research-wise, having data and seeing what these opportunities and challenges are so that we can identify and mitigate these obstacles. And then a future goal of mine is to have this data disseminated to both SNMA and also medical school deans so that they can develop targeted initiatives, pipeline programming to better support underrepresented students. All right, and so my project is an extension or a continuation of an initiative that was developed in 2001 called the Obstacles and Opportunities Initiative. And part of my work was to conduct essentially a thorough review of this project history to see what hasn't worked, what has worked, to better develop my project. So in 2002, there was a project developed by Dr. Morgan Roberts, Laura Morgan Roberts, and essentially this was a part of her PhD dissertation. And from her presentation at AMEC, from then on, there were future research projects developed from there. And in 2003, there was a focus groups initiative. This one is the highlight of the Obstacles and Opportunities Initiative history, which I'll go in more detail into, where they looked at the specific successes and barriers for underrepresented medical students. And in 2010, this project was picked back up by the Diversity Research Committee. However, IRB approval, or the IRB process did not go through. And in 2015, they learned from this and obtained IRB approval. However, there was no publication or outcome from the findings. And so it was important to look at the gaps in the initiative history that are highlighted in red, as these are like essentially areas of growth where the research project can be improved upon. And so as you can see, in 2007, there was a project published by Odom et al. And this was highlighted in the Diversity in Medicine webinar that we, as NFLP fellows, learned about, highlighting essentially the significance of this project. And in this paper, they found specific highlighted facilitators to success and barriers to success for future physicians, specifically medical students. And so facilitators to success included support systems, professional exposure, financial aid, personal characteristics listed there that are race, language, ability, self-confidence. And then there are barriers to success, experiences with racial stereotyping and discrimination, challenges with standardized testing, financial and social support, self-imposed barriers, and lack of cultural representation. And so I did a thorough review looking through the various projects that were conducted and looking at what hasn't worked, what has worked, what I can improve when I develop my research project. And in the previous studies, they did primarily study recruitment from SNMA membership, but that was a limitation in a lot of those studies because it excluded students who were not active in SNMA but were active in other medical organizations, and it limited responses from other cultural and economic backgrounds, which made it hard to have a comparison tool to see what is available to underrepresented students and what is available to non-underrepresented students. There was also a lack of the number of responses, which limited the statistical power of the study. The 2007 study that I went over was a focus group study, but the focus groups rely on the ability of the researchers to interpret and categorize the comments made by the students. So it'd be better to take that what was made in the focus group questions and apply it to a survey format to have a specific way to review the data. And another thing was that previous studies investigated experiences of medical students and didn't look at pre-medical students, though pre-medical students do make through maps. And then there has been, as you could see, a lack of continuity and sustainability of the Obstacles and Opportunities Initiative because the last publication that was made was in 2007. And so from this, I developed a timeline of action items since continuity was one thing that I wanted to work on for this initiative. And so here's a summary of the timeline of my project. Completed action items are in green. So I worked on the history review, developing a research team, literature review, project proposal. I'm working on a project proposal now. So the things that are highlighted in yellow, I'm working now, developing the survey, and acquire and IRB approval. And in the future, I'm hoping that we work on distributing the survey, publishing the findings, analysis of the results, and presenting the findings. And so when I was thinking about what research question I wanted to investigate, I looked at the findings of the AAMC application cycle, how that went. And in that cycle, medical school enrollment was more diverse in 2021, significantly more diverse when you look at it in comparison to previous years. And so what's highlighted in green are an increase in applicants it's separated by race and ethnicity. So as you can see, for the percent change between 2020 and 2021, there was a 41% increase in Black or African American applicants for the 2020 when looking at the 2020 cycle in comparison to the 2019 cycle, which is huge. And so I wanted to see this notable increase, this notable increase also resulted directly in an increase in the number of Black matriculants. So it allowed for there to be a 21% increase in the Black applicants, and also there was a huge percent change in other racial and ethnic groups as well. So for my research question, I wanted to investigate what factors contribute to increased matriculation, facilitators to success, because there are several research papers out there that look at the barriers, what barriers are out there for medical students, but in the application cycle for pre-medical students, but there are barely any that look at what is actually working and what is helpful. And then my secondary question was to, given the increase in underrepresented applicants in 2020 cycle, what are the primary motivators for why these groups applied at a higher to matriculate at a higher rate? And so my project's challenges and strengths. So some of my challenges are communication. So obtaining previous years' project materials was difficult. Communicating and gaining these materials was kind of difficult, but I worked on trying to draw upon my past research experiences to develop a research project, and compiled all of my work on one large document to share with future fellows who hopefully will work. IRB approval is also another challenge because I'm currently not affiliated with an institution. And so I have been working very hard to network and find mentors, research mentors, so that I can work on getting this published and working on having approval for this project to be disseminated. It is also a large project and will require a significant amount of time to complete, so that hopefully in the future, future fellows, there will be more than one fellow working on this project, a pre-medical and medical student, so that there can be both aspects of that incorporated in this project. And another challenge was project inconsistency in previous years. So I had to essentially work from scratch and work and see what hasn't worked and what has to develop this project further. And so what's next? My goal is to hopefully have future fellows work on what's highlighted in red, and I'm currently working what's highlighted in yellow right now. So hopefully we can work on actually having the survey distributed, having it analyzed, publishing the findings, presenting them to deans and to SNMA leadership, so that we can develop pipeline and like initiative programming that is targeted towards what are the weakness, like targeted to figure out and actually promote underrepresented students. So some lessons learned. I learned that communication is key, as many have said, and having cotton is something that is very hard, and communicating what the past is very important. Building a team with unique ideas for research project is very necessary for successful research, because having my ideas out there is not team with diverse ideas is amazing. And then research projects do require a lot of creativity and flexibility to be completed, because this is, for example, a large project, and having flexibility and knowing that this will be something that I'm not able to complete, but something that will be completed in the future, was something that I learned. And so a special thank you to everyone here that is listening. And feel free to contact me if you have any questions or any input on this research project at my email or my Twitter listed here.
Great job, Niat. This is wonderful. And we also have people from the audience giving you claps and hearts and just shouting you out there. So that's wonderful to see. For your project, I'm pretty impressed with how you were able to go back in history, SNMA history, and find the information needed. And then from there, basically build up from scratch how to get the project up and running. So one thing you did mention that I thought was really important and crucial was the fact that you need to get an IRB in order for this to be something that was something that can go forward. In order for you to get that IRB, does it matter if the project is taken over by somebody else moving forward, or will that IRB still be able to be used for your project? And then secondly, another thing that you mentioned was in your slides was making sure you had statistical power to be able to make this something that is feasible / turn it into a paper of some sort. In your transition documents, will you be laying out the type of statistical analyses that is going to be needed for this project?
Yeah, so let me answer your second question first. So for this, for the statistical power, so I'm working on having a greater number of respondents. So like in the 2015 survey that they put out, they actually collaborated with a lot of medical affinity groups. So like AMSA and LMSA. And so I'm hoping to try and do the same so that we can have a large number of respondents in the survey. In terms of the statistical analyses, I know that's something I've done a little bit, but I'm not knowledgeable on that enough. Which is why I'm working in terms of getting funding to have a data analyst or someone who's very specialized in that field. So I have project in the past who knows how to get grants to the AAMC. Getting that, and then hopefully we can secure funding that way. And then your first question again.
Sorry, can you repeat that? What was my first question?
Yes.
Oh, my first question was more on the, I think I just lost it myself. It just flew away.
I think it was IRB approval.
Yes. There we go.
Yes. So for IRB approval, I'm thinking of having it like solidified and getting IRB approval close to when we would have the survey disseminated. So you have to have like the survey ready before IRB approval. So by that, I want to have the right before we are like ready to distribute it. That way you're still able to use it. And when it's like, when you're able to publish it and everything too, you could just easily get that information.
Sounds good. That sounds like a plan as well. I appreciate your presentation. This was great. I can't wait to see you next week. And we were putting up the comments of people. They also liked your presentation. They thought it was very interesting and very poignant and something that we need to be doing. So kudos to you. And I will bring up the next person. I'll see you next week. Thank you, Niyat. Wonderful presentation. We also have another national team presentation coming up. And this person is Alexandra Nunnery, and he will be doing the Pipeline Mentorship Institute. So I'm going to bring you up, Alex, and we are welcoming you.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, of course. And here's your presentation, and I'll let you take it away.
All right, awesome. So my name is Alexandra Nunnery, and I am a non-traditional pre-medical student, and I'm currently the NFLP Fellow for BASE. So what BASE is one of our pipeline programs. It's called the Brotherhood Alliance for Science and Education. And I'm going to move on to the next slide. All right, so I wanted to put in the SNMA mission statement because obviously it's super important. I'm not going to recite the full thing, but I wanted to focus on these two specific things because they really in line with what BASE is doing as a PMI program. So creating culturally competent and socially conscious physicians is a big part of what BASE is doing as a pipeline program. And so I want to move on to the next slide. All right, our agenda is as follows. I'm going to focus on the BASE background, talk a little bit about how BASE is mission focused, talk a little bit about my focus as the NFLP fellow, and then the current state of BASE. And then I want to talk about kind of what's next, what I plan for the BASE programming. You can move on to the next slide. So there we go, perfect. So BASE background. So BASE was created really as a response to the AAMC's alternating course report, which was basically this report that talks specifically about why Black men in medicine are not going, why Black men are not going into medicine. It really talked about these different factors. And so it was really a wake-up call to medical schools and then also organizations about what we need to be doing to kind of answer and address that. And so really the SNMA decided to come up with the BASE pipeline program. Now, BASE specifically focused on a couple factors. We wanted to focus on educational development of minority men, the lack of educational opportunities for minority men, the lack of encouragement and the lack of positive role models, and also misguided information about achievement and what it looks like to be a Black male in medicine. So we really came up with the BASE program because of that, and BASE program has been around for quite a minute. So I'm gonna move on to the next slide. So the BASE pipeline program, I talked a little bit about this before, but basically BASE and all of the pipeline mentoring pipeline programs have been a big part of the SNMA's mission for a while to really just increase the number of clinically conscious, culturally competent, socially conscious physicians, and also really create a diverse workforce in medicine, public health, and just really addressing all these different needs. Next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about my focus. So as NFLP fellow, I believe that I had a lot of things that I could have done with the BASE programming. Now BASE has been around for a while, but there's currently only one active chapter. And so my focus was really to engage these different ties with the current chapter, but then also look at ways to create more chapters and kind of create these different opportunities for BASE to grow as a programming. And really, that's what we say revitalization is, really to revitalize BASE within the SNMA. So the first thing I wanted to talk about was my focus was to emphasize and create really mentorship opportunities for undergrad students. So previously BASE focused on mostly K through 12, but we felt like BASE should have really focus a little bit more on undergraduate men because they are so close to the time of coming into medicine, and so we feel like that's a time for us to just focus on them as well. So we wanted to expand what BASE was doing as well. So the objectives of BASE have kind of changed. Second, we wanted to collaborate with minority associations of pre-medical students and MAPS. So really, this is just partnering with MAPS, seeing how we can have undergrad students mentoring K through 12, and then also seeing how we can have medical students mentoring undergraduate men as well. So we wanted to also use our current PMI programs like HPrep, YSEP, take those programs, use the men that are already engaged in those programs and really bring them over to BASE and see how we can kind of orchestrate this community. And then last, but definitely not least, we wanted to create a community and make sure that parental participation is included, because in the alternating course report, this was something that we noticed that was lacking. And then also, really, I talked a lot about mentorship, but we really believe that that's this key staple with making sure that pipeline programs are successful. So we wanted to make sure that NMA was also included in what we're doing here at SNMA. So we are doing that through my next slide, which I'm going to kind of get into some specifics. All right, so I talked a little bit about these things that we're kind of doing, but these are the things that I focused on while I was NFLP fellow. So first, develop a plan/campaign to relaunch and introduce BASE programming protocol. So I think that this is super important, and I want to emphasize that we actually created a task force which included current members of the Johns Hopkins BASE program. Johns Hopkins, like I said earlier, is the only current BASE chapter. So we have those leaders come a part of our BASE task force. And so basically we have a group of Black men who are working to kind of relaunch and reintroduce BASE in SNMA and MAPS chapters. This is really just like the foundational things that we are kind of going into. And so that was a big part of what I was doing and working with the PMI and just making sure that I was coming in and helping guide that task force. Second, I created more specific curriculum. So a lot of the stuff that was in the PMI handbook were very vague, and there weren't things that were specific to what we're trying to do here in BASE. And I believe that because they weren't specific, that led to a lack of utilization. So I think that that's super important. As I talked about earlier, we want to expand BASE programming. There's only current one BASE chapter, so we want to make sure it goes across. There's so many SNMA and MAPS chapters. We think this is the opportunity to expand BASE. We are also launching 100 Minority Men of Medicine. So basically what this is we want to highlight past leaders, current leaders, Black men who have done things in the SNMA and the MAPS, because we want people in our pipeline program to be able to see that there are men that look like them, that are in leadership, that are doing great things. And so this kind of helps with promoting that awareness. And then we are also launching the National Virtual BASE program, which we are doing that after the AMAC. And so two of my projects are actually going to be after AMAC. So that's kind of, it's interesting how I really am laying this foundation. And so we can actually move on to the next slide and talk about that a little bit. Well, actually, we're going to talk projects. So let's talk about our project strengths. So one of the things, as you guys can see, I've talked about this a lot, but I had great communication with Jasmine, our PMI fellow. And I want to say thank you so much to Jasmine because she's been super responsive. The collaborative planning that has gone on in this time as NFLP fellow has been truly amazing. And also, I talked a little bit about the BASE revitalization task force. We have a lot of strong, amazing Black men on this revitalization task force. I'm excited about the future of BASE because these are some heavy hitters, and just being in a room with them has been truly amazing, honestly. So another thing we wanted to make sure we were doing is making sure that there are establishable SMART goals for BASE, because I feel like there's been like this loss of transition with BASE, and so that's why it has been so inactive for a while. So we really came up, and I worked with Jasmine on this to come up with these SMART goals. And obviously peer reports is something that you guys have all seen, so I'm not going to talk about that too much. But some challenges, some weaknesses I saw. So unclear vision and plan. I talked about this a little bit earlier. You can't get anything done if there's not a clear vision of what we're trying to do as a BASE programming. We're not going to be able to expand BASE if we don't have a clear vision for what we're doing now. And then another thing I wanted to really focus on is disconnected transition of power, because this is something that we've seen obviously throughout SNMA. And so for us here in BASE, I want to make sure that we're not having this. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit later in the next slide. I want to talk about how we're laying the foundation so that there's not this disconnected transition of power. So you can go ahead on to the next slide. So I feel like as a BASE fellow currently, that my goal was to really lay the foundation for what it is that the future fellows are going to be doing. And so what that means for me is honestly is that I want to see this BASE program expand. I would like to see more chapters. And so I'm actually going to stay on the revitalization task force and finish out some of these pending action items that we have going past AMAC. But most importantly, I want to be the right-hand man for this next fellow and really bring them up, because there's a lot of work to be done in this space. And I really do believe that my goal was really just to come in, build a foundation, be active. And there's so many great people working on the BASE project that this is really a great opportunity to first, like I talked about earlier, really fix that disconnected transition of power, but then also really expand BASE as a pipeline program. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor to questions.
Wonderful job, Alex. Wonderful job. And I can see here we got some comments in while you're speaking, and said from Melissa Hernandez, she's a previous FLP fellow, saying, "Go, Alex, you're doing amazing work revitalizing the BASE program." And I think that's something that is a common thread through some of the national projects here. There was a lot of revitalization that had to be done because a lot of the stuff did fall through the cracks. And here in your presentation, you're showing what it takes to get something up and running, and not only to do so the same way it was previously, but how to make it more robust, right? So incorporating the parents, listening to what the surveys or what the feedback was from last time. So I think that's very important. And I love to hear that you're going to continue working on this project even after AMEC. So typically FLP does end at AMEC, where they get their certificates and they graduate from the fellowship program. But one of the things that we do like is for fellows to continue their leadership journey with an SNMA, and it looks like you're doing just that. So super proud of you, Alex. Thank you so much for all of your hard work. And I have a soft spot for Alex. He was one of my mentors the entire year. So it's great to see you from where you started to where you are now. So congratulations. And I can't wait to see you in person next week.
Yeah, thank you.
Our last presentation, last but certainly not the least, is Bria. So Bria White, I'll bring you on and you can go ahead and take over. So wonderful to see you, Bria. And there you go.
All right. So hello, everyone. My name is Bria White. I am a second-year medical student at the Brody School of Medicine, and I work with the Publications Committee this year on the Your Story Matters blog and the Grand Rounds blog. So for a little background, the SNMA Publications Committee produces several publications, including the Journal of the Student National Medical Association, also known as JSNMA, the Grand Rounds blog, and Your Story Matters. As I said before, I kind of focus more on the blog side of things. So the Grand Rounds blog highlights pre-med and medical students, while Your Story Matters highlights residents and attending physicians who are part of SNMA. So the primary aim of my project was to increase student and physician participation on both Grand Rounds blog and Your Story Matters. Originally, I was going to be working with the JSNMA, but the Publications Committee is a relatively small team. So I was just trying to be flexible and help out wherever I could. So my main project goals were to create an advertisement for the blog so that people know what it is, to submit this flyer for advertisement on SNMA social media platforms, and then to recruit medical students and physicians to submit their stories. So I did end up creating a flyer for the Grand Rounds blog and Your Story Matters. Instead of making 2 separate flyers, I decided to make one and include links, as you can see on the flyer, for people to submit to each of the blogs. I went through a few rounds of editing for this process, and Ariana was very helpful in this process. I submitted this flyer to be published on the SNMA Instagram and Twitter and Facebook page. And then I reached out to med students and physicians to submit their stories. So these are a few of the posts. I don't believe they are up right now, but they will be coming. I have a few medical students and a physician who will be featured on the website in the weeks to come. So what I liked about this project is that it gave me an opportunity to exercise creative freedom through the design of the flyer. I got to try out different formats and layouts and try to make something that was eye-catching and would attract people to submit their stories. I assisted the publications committee with the existing project. So instead of me working on something completely new, since the committee really needed help on things that had already been started in the past, that's where I was able to focus my energy. And then it taught me to be flexible and how to fill in as needed. So some of the challenges that I experienced were that the expectations of the project were not well defined, since I was just kind of helping out as needed. And then I didn't have direct access to the committee's resources, so I would have to ask somebody else on the committee to send me something rather than me having direct access. So they kind of slowed the process down a little bit. What's next? So the flyer can be used to garner further submissions for the blogs. And then it can also be tweaked and edited just to make it a little bit more fresh. And then I plan to be around and assist the publications committee for future needs, since the team is pretty small. All right, so in summary, I learned that effective communication is vital to working on any team. And if you're ever unsure on how you can contribute to a team, just ask, what can I do to help? All right, so this is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to the FLP team and to Ariana specifically. And I'll take any questions that you have.
You would think I would get the mic meeting done with the last one, but thank you so much. This was great to see. And then the fact that you focus on the blog portion, I thought it was really important, because I know we get the JSNMA in our emails, but the blog I think was totally underutilized. So it was great to see you work on that project. And in particular, I do have a question along the lines of if I was a student, how do I actually access this blog? Can I access it without being an SNMA member, or do I have to be an SNMA member? And how do I go about doing that?
So the blog should be available on the snma.org website.
Okay.
I don't know the exact link, but I know if you go on Google and type in SNMA Grand Rounds, you'll be able, or SNMA Your Story Matters, you'll be able to see the posts that we have.
And then if I was a student who wants to be highlighted in that, how do I go about being highlighted?
So I can find the link. I'm gonna probably resubmit our flyer to SNMA again at some point this week, since there'll be a lot of eyes on the webpage for AMEC and stuff.
Yes.
There's a short little Google form. It's kind of like an asynchronous interview type of thing. So it's like a form, you answer some questions, and then we post it up on the website. So it's something you can do on your own time.
Sounds good. That sounds perfect. And I think a lot of this stuff that we're doing here is the ability to access is huge, right? Giving access to people at the right time and the moment they need it is what we're trying to do here. And your project is addressing that. So thank you, Bria. I look forward to this project being continuous. And you said you're going to also be part of the JSNMA. I think that's fantastic, because we also are always looking for more leaders to continue the mission of the SNMA. So thank you so much. You did a wonderful job, and I can't wait to see you next week, get your certificate. So wonderful job.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, of course. And with that, that is the end of the NFLP final presentations. We could not have been more happy to see all the presentations, what all the fellows put in, the work they've put in throughout the year. And it just shows you the commitment and the people that we pick here for FLP. So if you've stuck it out this long and you're interested yourself in being part of FLP, applications will open April 14th, 2022. So look out for that. If you're at AMEC, you'll definitely be hearing about it. Please apply, and we're looking forward our next class of fellows to one up the ones what they did today, but if possible. If anyone is interested, definitely reach out to flp@snma.org. We will be there to field any questions you may have. There are flyers going around, so definitely. And I just want to give a big round of applause to our fellows. They did that. It was them. It was the commitment they had, the drive, and the want to learn more about SNMA and want to know how they can continue the SNMA mission. So just a brief history. We did have, our next year is going to be this is our 10th year. So this has been going on for so long, and we've had several FLP fellows who have become SNMA presidents, vice presidents, and other hosts of all positions within the National SNMA, and have continued on in their journey in medicine. So if that's something that you're interested in, please definitely go ahead and apply. So we are looking forward to you, and thank you for our fellows this year. We could not have been more proud. With that, I'll close out, and thank you, everybody.